All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. This is the May 21st, 2026 meeting of the New York State Council on Hunger and Food Policy. I'm Kate Fulham. I'm the team lead for food systems and resiliency within our agricultural development division at the department. And I'm joined by Kendall Huff and Ashmita Das, our co-leaders of the council. For those that joined as panelists today, if you would like to just add your name, affiliation, and any announcements or links that you'd like to share into the chat, we can capture those to follow up. For today's discussion, if you can stay muted until you'd like to speak, and then raise your hand in order to contribute to the discussion. We do have 46 participants and 30 panelists on today, so just want to make sure to have an organized discussion. For those that are tuning in today online as viewers, please know that chat is disabled, but we do have a question and answer feature. So feel free to submit questions and we'll elevate those into the discussion as we move through the agenda. We do have a link to our website that will provide the QR code at the end of this meeting. There you can also review our past reports, the history of the council, and recordings of meetings, as well as the slide presentations. So that's very helpful for your reference. I will review the agenda next. So if you want to go to the next slide, Kendall. Today we have a packed agenda. Our meeting goes from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. We have been successful at on-time meeting, so thank you all for your cooperation. We'll have opening remarks following my welcome here with our Commissioner Richard Ball, who is the chair of this group. We will have some state agency updates following that, and then a special presentation from our Rockefeller Institute of Government Science Policy Fellow, Ashmita Das, who helps us co-lead the council, followed by our partner in New Jersey, Mark Daglison from the New Jersey Office of the Food Security Advocate. We'll take a short break at around 11:15 and then round out the meeting with our work group updates, discussion of some early recommendations for 2026 annual report, and then close out the meeting with our next steps for the remainder of our schedule this year and some closing remarks. I'll hand it off now to Commissioner Richard Ball.
Well, thanks so much, Kate, and thanks so much to everyone for pulling together this very full agenda. Pretty relevant, pretty timely, I think. Pretty busy time everywhere for all of you, I know. More interesting, I think, for the agencies as we navigate budget season here in Albany. We're making some progress there, but I first of all just want to thank everybody for being a part of this group. It's a relevant group, it's a timely group, as I mentioned in the agenda, but so important really is what is done in the work groups, where we can dive a little deeper into our spheres of influence and pull up some great information for everybody. With that regards, the work group meetings over the last couple of months focused on communications, focused on crisis mitigation. Obviously, we've got a lot of headwinds coming our way from all around us. I think that we can't over communicate on the things that we need to talk about. And I think that particularly at this time in our country's history and in our mission areas, it's very important that collaboration be the word of the decade, and actually it must be the decade of collaboration, I think. We can't have a lot of daylight in between us as we look at the things that are coming at us every day. So we need to stay close together, and I think the work groups are such an important way we do that. So looking ahead, I just want to say thank you for a great agenda. I'm looking forward to diving into some of the details here. But more importantly, I just want to look forward to hearing from the work groups where the work really gets done here. And with that, let me turn it back over to you, Kate.
Thanks so much. So seeing in the chat all of the hellos, thanks everybody for joining. We have a few helpful links and also one reminder of the New York State Food Summit coming up on June 16th. So please check that out from the Alliance for a Hunger-Free New York. All right, I'll pass it along to Lauren Williams, who's going to provide an update on federal and state budget.
Thanks, Kate. All right, we can go to the next slide. And as Kate said, just wanted to give everybody an update. And we know this is probably a bit of a moving target right now with the legislature continuing to consider budget language. And, we've seen some movement on certain budget bills. So just wanted to frame that and kind of let you know that I'll have a couple points in the slide that have been updated since yesterday and this morning, since we've seen some language release. But as folks know, the council met last fall and just wanted to give a quick overview to let folks know what we saw in state of the state and subsequent budget that really ties into some of the recommendations that you all put together in the annual report that both focus on the farm side, but also the food and nutrition access side as well. And kind of, some top level ones were investment tax credit extension, which really benefits our farmers and investing in their farm businesses. So the proposal is to extend that till 2033 and still waiting on final language there. $30 million for tariff relief for farmers, ABCD funding. This is childcare for farm workers and a really important part of the entire childcare package. Dairy modernization grants for our dairy farmers, funding for environmental protection fund, which our farmers utilize, but also there's some nutrition programs in there. Procurement, discretionary purchasing increases, HIPNet investment, My Plate or New York plates, modernization of EBT cards, summer meals, childcare initiatives, and those all interact with our other partner agencies as well. And flagging that we're still kind of waiting for some of those. And then, final, we'll see what the final budget numbers are. And we just got extended till next Tuesday, but wanted to give everybody kind of flag on that. Next slide. And these are just some specifics, and I won't go into each one, but just for folks, things we track that, really impact your folks on everything is school infrastructure that's getting, schools the ability to do basically scratch cooking where they're able to work together to purchase from farmers. And this is our fourth round, so really excited to hopefully see that next potential round. And then, other proposals. And then under EPF, we have our Farmers Markets Resiliency Grant, our Urban Farms Community Gardens, Fresh Connect, SNAP EBT, Climate Resilient Farm Programs, Ag Non-Point Source, and Farmland Protection. Still waiting to see how those final numbers will shake out, but I think all important in terms of, supporting farm resiliency and the, things that the Economic Vitality work group focuses on, but some of the other work groups as well. Aid to localities. So this is, our wide variety of funding lines, and I did not list them all, just due the, vast nature of them. But this is where we saw, the extra funding for the tariff relief, ABCD programs, beginning farmers disadvantaged programs. We'll see different, the executive does her add in, and then Senate and Assembly, of course, everybody knows, will kind of put in their programs as well. And I just want to say, this is, all a starting point in how we end up with a final budget, as many folks know. Next slide. And then Article 7s, and lots of different acronyms there. And those all play a different part of where policy meets budget in terms of, there's different priorities and initiatives that I think the legislature and the governor each have, and how, those all shake out remains to be seen. But I did want to note on a couple of those based on updates from last night, in the PPGG on public procurement, it's looking like that is going to shake out about $150,000, which, allows state agencies increased discretionary purchasing, which is something we've heard from our procurement work groups, which allows state agencies to potentially purchase more local food and be more flexible. So if, that's something we're really, have been working hard on and something we see as a positive. On the farm to school, those were not included in the final budget language. So we'll continue to work on our 30% program and see that as another avenue for farmers. But wanted to highlight some things under that, just because, again, things you all have been working on in terms of the ITC, food donation tax credits, and food security reporting as well, especially given some of the changes that have happened at the federal level and have popped up in different work group discussions. And then last but not least, federal updates. I think, as Commissioner said, things are a little bit foggy at the federal level. And so really looking at how we can collaborate and, based on what's happening at the federal level, how do we strengthen our collaboration at the state level? So wanted to give a real quick update on Farm Bill, that the House version did pass on April 30th. That was a 224 to 200 vote. Depending on where you or your organization may have taken a stance on that, some of that technically it was bipartisan, but I think there wasn't a large consensus on that. Did want to flag a couple of things. The Local Farmers Feeding Our Communities Act, that's a New York Food for New York Families, or LFPA-like program, was included in that. So we see that as, a good next step for, efforts to, keep that program alive, and because it did such good work. SNAP provisions, there was no outright reversal of the HR 1 provisions that were passed last summer, but there were some prepared food amendments that did pass, and those were narrower, and a lot of chatter back and forth on what should be allowed to be purchased under SNAP, and given the dynamics of, do people have the food preparation abilities at home, or should they be able to purchase prepared foods? And I think the biggest outlier here is the Senate. We're still waiting for bill text. Senate Ag Chair Bozeman has kind of said, maybe end of May or June. Time's ticking, and whether or not we see, language remains to be seen. And as folks know, he has a higher threshold. He needs to get to 60 votes. So he'll have to get some Democrats to, jump on board, which is harder, especially with the SNAP changes. Did want to flag for, our farmers, especially who are, looking at the innovation and potential that the specialty crop block grants provide. USDA announced $275 million for fiscal year 2026. New York is set to receive about $1.5 million. Looking forward to next year, USDA has said, hey, OMB has let us know that they're going to require a cost share, which has not been the case in the past. So we have a lot of questions about how that cost share can be met, and we're still waiting for clarification from USDA. But I did want to highlight that both the House Farm Bill and House Appropriation Bill removes that cost share requirement, which I think is something we're following closely, just because those specialty crop block grants provide such an important piece to our farmers, and they've never required cost share before. And then, of course, MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again. Lots of discussion going back and forth. Dietary guidelines were released on January 6th. You see the new pyramid, and lots of discussion back and forth on how that was shaped. And I think regardless of, your take on that, it still impacts, nutrition standards, so especially school nutrition standards and other institutional standards. So we're still waiting for some potential updates as well. And then, of course, we keep hearing that, HHS and FDA are going to do some regulations and updates on food dyes, food additives. And so we're watching those to see what happens potentially and any trickle down effects that may have on the state as well. So real quick overview, and, feel free to have folks, reach out on the side to, have a discussion on anything, but also wanted to make sure we give our state partners some time to give updates as well. So thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Lauren. Next, we have our partners from OTDA, and Kendall, I believe you're going to be able to allow them to share screen so they can present their slides. Okay, looks good, Bill. We just can't hear you. Let's see, unmute. Gotcha.
We have to stop.
All right, now we can.
Hold on a second here.
Sure.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay,
And
great.
then if you just put your slide deck into presentation mode, I think we'll be able to see it a little bit better.
There we go. Yep. Okay. All right. We can get started then.
And then
Good morning, everyone.
Bill, just let you know your camera slid down a little bit, so we just have a view of your eye is all.
Yeah. There we go.
All
I can't
good.
see myself in this mode, so.
All good.
Okay.
The show must go on. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Konchelik, and I'm the SNAP Employment Policy Bureau Chief at the Bureau of Employment Advancement Services within the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. And first, I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to discuss the ABOD topic with us today. I'll provide a brief overview of our work and some of the federal changes that make partnership and client engagement at the state and local levels more important than ever. And thank you again for participating in today's briefing. So how does the Bureau of Employment and Advancement Services fit in? The Bureau of Employment and Advancement Services at OTDA oversees employment policies and programs for public assistance and SNAP offered through the local departments of social services. These programs have work requirements that participants must meet unless they are excused for various specific reasons. EA and SNAP employment services differ by county based on local needs and resources. In some counties, social services staff are co-located in career centers. Others contract with local workforce providers and for some or all of their employment services. And in other counties, districts handle employment services directly. Now, I'm just going to take a moment to provide a summary of some of the changes to SNAP employment policy resulting from HR 1. So as you guys are aware, on July 4th, the federal government passed the reconciliation bill known as HR 1. This act included provisions that affect the SNAP work rules, especially for the able-bodied adults without dependent population, which are often referred to as ABODs. To get SNAP benefits for more than 3 months in a 3-year period, an ABOD must meet certain work requirements, usually by working or taking part in work programs for at least 80 hours a month. Here, I'm just providing a high-level overview of the key ABOD changes under HR 1. First, the age range expanded from 18 to 54 to 18 to 64, meaning more individuals are now subject to the time limit. Second, the dependent child exemption has been narrowed. It used to apply to children under the age of 18, and now it is set to the age of 14. And third, the exemptions for homeless individuals, veterans, and former foster youth were eliminated. And a new exemption was added for individuals eligible for the Indian Health Services. And finally, waiver eligibility has been restricted for states. We can only apply for waivers with areas of unemployment above 10%, which is a significantly higher bar for us to meet. And as you can see, the bill significantly tightens ABOD eligibility by expanding the population subject to time limits While the new tribal exemption provides a little bit of relief, the overall effect is a large increase in individuals at risk of losing SNAP benefits if they can't meet these work rules. And now I just want to clarify how the time limit works. An ABOD's eligibility for SNAP is limited to 3 months in a fixed 3-year period unless they meet the ABOD work rules. The 3 months during which the ABOD receives benefits but doesn't meet the rules is called accountable month or accountable months. New York uses a fixed statewide clock currently running from October 1st of 2023 through September 30th of 2026. Under this option, the 3-year period has the same beginning and end date in all districts for all ABODs, and a new 3-year period will begin on October 1st of 2026. As a result of these changes, new groups of populations must follow the ABOD work rules, including those between the age of 54 and 64. Because of the reduced flexibilities for states to waive the requirement as of March 1st, New York lost all of its existing countywide waivers, and all districts are required to implement the time limit. We only have 2 tribal reservations in New York that were approved for a waiver for the period of March 1st of 2026 through February 28th of 2027. And here, I think it's important to note that as of May 31st, SNAP recipients outside of Saratoga who had to already meet these requirements as of October, anyone outside of Saratoga who did not meet the work rules for March, April, or May are set to lose their benefits June 1st. During the SNAP interview, individuals are screened to evaluate if they are subject to the ABOD rules or if they qualify for an exemption. If a barrier is identified, documentation may be required to support the exemption. If you're working with clients or people on SNAP, it's important to explain these exemptions and help them submit documentation to the district. Reporting an exemption can help prevent a loss of benefits. And here is an overview of the conditions that would make someone exempt from the ABOD time limit. These include exemptions from the general work rules and the ABOD time limit. Here I just want to highlight some of the ABOD exemptions. If you're exempt from the general work requirements, aside from the individuals age 60 to 64, if you're medically certified as physically or mentally unfit for employment, if you're pregnant, a parent, or otherwise other household member residing in a household with a dependent child under 14, individuals who are Indians, urban Indians, California Indians, or other Indians who are eligible for the Indian Health Services, and individuals who are also not required to meet the ABOD work rules are those that live in waived areas like the 2 reservations. Again, people who do not report an exemption and provide documentation if needed if they do report an exemption and they provide whatever documentation is needed to support that, they don't have to follow the ABOD work rules. If someone is identified as an ABOD, they will receive a letter explaining the SNAP work rules. If they're not currently meeting the ABOD work rules, they'll also receive another letter referred to as the ABOD work activity letter. This letter offers an appointment to help the person connect to work activities and to keep their benefits. And the ABOD tracking began March 1st of 2026. It's important to encourage your clients to read these letters carefully, attend their appointments, and contact the district if they have questions or need help. I just wanted to highlight on this slide that these are the different ways participants can comply with the work rules through work, training, volunteering, or other qualified activities. All of these options offer flexibility to match people with activities that fit their goals, experience, and readiness for work. However, these pathways depend on strong partnerships. Career centers and WIOA programs offer job search training, education, and direct connections to employers. Veterans and Trade Act programs provide specialized pathways for eligible clients. SNAP E&T programs allow districts to place participants in an education, training, and work experience activity that align with local workforce needs. And volunteering is also a very important engagement tool because it helps clients gain experience and stay connected to the workforce while meeting the rules. And people who volunteer have to meet a lower standard of hours than the full 80-hour requirement. If you're participating in work experience or volunteering, the monthly hours are based on the household SNAP benefit divided by the state minimum wage. And for us, the goal is not just to meet the requirement, it's to connect people to opportunities that build skills and momentum towards employment. Engaging ABODs effectively really depends on the strength of our partnerships at the local level. No single system can do this alone, and that's where all of you can play a critical role. Workforce development boards, career centers, CBOs, educational providers like community colleges and BOCES each bring something essential to the table. When our partnerships are working in alignment, sharing information, coordinating referrals, and maintaining follow-up, we move from a fragmented approach to a more seamless system that supports individuals in a meaningful way. And from OTDA's perspective, we see our role as helping to support and reinforce these connections. But the real impact happens locally through the relationships that are built and sustained. So as we think about engaging ABODs, we really encourage a coordinated partnership-driven approach where individuals work together to support individuals on the path towards employment and stability. Agencies who work with SNAP recipients are in a unique position to support ABODs in their efforts to keep their SNAP benefits and to move forward. This includes job search support, job readiness training, education and skills development, and connections to employment opportunities. These are all critical pathways that can help individuals meet participation requirements while also moving towards long-term stability. We also encourage simple but important touch points, like reminding individuals to read their mail and respond to notices from their local district. These communications often include time-sensitive information about appointments, participation expectations, and exemptions. At the local level, coordination is key by connecting with your local social service district, aligning on available activities, and ensuring participation is documented. You can help create a smoother experience for participants and reduce gaps in engagement. Ultimately, this is about building a system where individuals aren't navigating services on their own, where workforce partners and districts are working together to support them. And this is a real partnership opportunity that benefits everyone involved, the district, workforce systems, and most importantly, the individuals that we serve. Recently, as part of our ABOD re-implementation process, we asked counties about their local outreach efforts. Nearly all districts began outreach with their ABOD population before March 1st. Larger districts also met with community-based organizations, workforce agencies, and other partners to raise awareness about the ABOD time limit and encourage compliance. Some counties have taken the lead in these initiatives. Notably, since October of 2025, the Human Resources Administration has given over 68 ABOD-related presentations and information sessions reaching more than 4,000 people. These sessions were attended by representatives from groups like the United Way of New York City, and the Robin Hood Foundation, offices for elected officials, and staff from other city agencies. Additionally, since October 1st of 2025, the Monroe County Department of Human Services has given 46 presentations to various organizations and agencies, including the Monroe County Office of Mental Health, agency executives, Citizens Advocacy Council, WIOA system partners, FoodLink Food Pantry Network, Monroe Community Engagement Network, the SNAP Clinic for Father Tracy Advocacy Center, and the Monroe Community Hospital Administration, among others. And to support district efforts and increase awareness and promote engagement, OTDA launched a separate SNAP work rules page, which includes updated information about the ABOD work rules, helpful links, and templates. Here are some of the resources that are available at OTDA's public-facing website. Some of the materials provide general information, but others are geared towards specific groups. For example, we developed the flyer, the SNAP work requirements for older adults in partnership with the New York State Office of the Aging. The informational brochure, What New Yorkers Need to Know About Federal ABOD Work Rules, was created in collaboration with the New York State Office of Mental Health. In addition to explaining the work rules, this flyer also includes links to training and credential programs to help participants build skills and meet the rules. And last but not least, OTDA developed Facebook, Instagram, and X graphics that any organization can download and share on their own social media platform to raise awareness about the SNAP work rules. These graphics are also available on our website. And I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity to discuss this important topic today, and we'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have. But if there's not time for that, we would be happy to answer any questions you have by email. So thank you again for the opportunity to provide you with this information.
Thanks, Bill. Just a note for everyone tuning in, we'll make these presentations and the recording of the meeting available on the website. And at the end of our meeting today, we'll have the link there. But if you go onto the Ag and Markets website, you can search New York State Council on Hunger and Food Policy and get directly to all that information. That'll be posted within a few days of this meeting. In the chat, we also had some information shared from Hunger Free America, so wanted to highlight that. Joel Berg had said any nonprofit groups can post volunteer activities for SNAP recipients who need to meet the work requirements. And the website is volunteer.hungerfreeamerica.org/partnership. So that could be a useful resource if you're looking to help folks connect with volunteer opportunities that count for those work requirements. Next up, we are going to, Kendall, go back to sharing the presentation slides for Emily Engel, who's going to provide a New York State Department of Health Social Care Networks update. Take it away, Emily.
Great, thank you. We'll jump right in. So this is the social care networks. I'm going to give a quick 2-second overview and then give an update on the program. So we can go to the next slide. So social care networks, just as a reminder, these are entities. We have 9 regional entities that are awarded across the state. They are Medicaid enrolled providers. Their job is to identify Medicaid members with unmet needs and navigate those Medicaid members to health-related social needs services. And they also reimburse for those health-related services to providers within their network. Social care networks themselves can range in different service providers. There's community-based organizations, healthcare providers, behavioral health providers, and other regional partners. And organizations in the social care network share data and technology to better integrate social, behavioral, and physical health services and improve the member experience. Next slide. These are our 9 social care networks, and I also put a link to our website in the chat so you can have those live links. Next website. Sorry, page. So while all members, Medicaid members will get navigated to existing resources, we have a set of enhanced populations that we're able to provide the health-related social needs services to. So if someone demonstrates as having an unmet need, they're enrolled in Medicaid managed care, and they meet one of these populations of focus, they are eligible for the services through the 1115 waiver. Next page. So these services include, again, screening and navigation, that's everybody, but then our enhanced services are, we have nutrition services such as nutritional counseling and education, medically tailored home delivered meals, food prescriptions, pantry stocking, and cooking supplies. There are a suite of housing services, social care management, and then health-related social need transportation. Next page. So to date, to give an update, we have screened over 1 million Medicaid members statewide, which is really exciting. The program has rapidly grown. We have a 4.8 times growth rate in weekly screening rates since the past 12 months. So it's like a 380% increase. The program's really been rapidly accelerating. The networks as a whole have over 3,000 social care navigators that are working to connect members to services. We have over 1,300 organizations that are providing the screening, navigation, and the enhanced services. Some organizations are doing more than one service. And over 600 community-based organizations have received capacity funding, and that's like seed money to really be able to participate, hire staff, and be able to participate in the social care networks, and that's been very successful. The enhanced services across our domains are available across the entire state, so every single county zip code has coverage of these services. So it's very interesting because, like I said, we have 1 million Medicaid members screened. 53% of the Medicaid members screened have at least one unmet need, and 31% of those members have multiple needs. Our biggest need, and probably no surprise to this group, is nutrition. 82% of members have a nutrition need. So that is our highest service, and say the food prescriptions and medically tailored meals are definitely our largest service that are provided to members. Next page. We're doing a lot to track the impact across the program, and as some examples, we stood this up in January, 2025, services started. And so it was really about that infrastructure capacity, which we've achieved, right? Having a breadth of network, having service availability, the IT and data infrastructure that is able to talk and report data up to the Medicaid data, and then CBO capacity building, that building of organizations in order to be able to serve as many Medicaid members as possible under the waiver. Member engagement and experience is ongoing. So we're looking at the member screenings completed. Like I mentioned, we're up to the 1 million mark, which is great to see. We're very focused on those enhanced populations that I had on the other slide, right? Those members that can get those services for 6 to 12 months, depending on their need, and spreading program awareness. Service delivery, we're tracking those services delivered, the timeliness of services delivered, the loop closure rate. Because we have the IT platforms, we are able to see how long is it taking for people to get their meal services, right? And tracking encounter claims through the Medicaid managed care plans, because the goal is to really bake this into the Medicaid program. There's a population health outcome. So we want to we're tracking the improvement of the health status of individuals. We want a reduction in, the members' unmet needs, right? Are getting social care network services helping with the future and sustainability of the member, nutrition needs or housing needs. Reducing unnecessary healthcare utilization, right? This is a Medicaid program, so we want to see a reduction in unnecessary utilization of Medicaid. And program sustainability, again, reduction overall cost of care, the longevity of CBOs, providers, and MCO in these services. So, the reason we have capacity funding, we set up these lead entities, is we do want this to be a long-term sustainable program. And there's a lot of planning that's going into, as I'm calling it, phase 2, our waiver renewal, as well as value-based payment for the social care networks post waiver in April 2027. And again, that goes into the whole integration of these health-related social needs services into healthcare. And the last page. These are just our resources on our website. We have information for Medicaid members, HRSN service providers, health behavioral providers as well.
Thanks so much, Emily. So just to set the stage for our next presentations before the break, we approached our annual report in 2025 with 4 broad strokes themes: communication, crisis mitigation, partnerships, and looking ahead. We're into the partnership stage, and the way that we're seeing that come together is really focusing on providing the right information so we can track, set goals, and know if we're meeting them. All of the information that you just heard is improving on our communication and partnerships across agencies to know some of those current crises that we need to address right away. So we'll move into our data-driven decision-making presentation. I'll hand over to Ashmita, and you can hand right off to Mark when you're finished.
Great, thanks, Kate. Good morning, all. It's great to see you all here today. So I'm just going to provide a brief introduction to some of the exploratory work that we've been doing around strengthening food systems research and data visualization at the state level. And then, as Kate mentioned, I'll hand it over to Mark Dingleson from the New Jersey Office of the Food Security Advocate to share some specific tools that his team has developed to advance some similar goals. And so situating this discussion within some of the Council's broader priorities and goals, as Kate mentioned, we organized this year's recommendations into these 4 categories based on a shared recognition that collaboration between different food system stakeholders in moving each of these recommendations forward is more critical than ever. And zooming in on the next slide, if you could move that forward, Kendall. There's actually an entire category of recommendations that revolves around, again, strengthening partnerships through some form of information sharing. So in recommendation 7, we have asset mapping for supply chain coordination. We have nutrition security data visualization in recommendation 8, and state food and nutrition program evaluation in recommendation 9. And these all really build on conversations that council members have been having for years now, right? And as we noted in the most recent report, there's been a lot of great progress made in this area already in terms of, mapping food access points and production and processing locations and tracking how much state investment there's been in different programmatic and geographic areas. Next slide, please. At the same time, there's been a series of recent decisions at the federal level that's making certain issues in the food system a lot harder to see and understand and act on. And the one that's received the most media attention and is most relevant to our discussion today is, as you all know, the cancellation of the USDA Household Food Security Report. But as has been noted in a lot of work group meetings recently, this is really just one part of a broader dismantling of research and data infrastructure across the country. It's part of a broader issue. And so we can talk about the consequences of what losing this data means for quite some time, but the heart of the issue here is really that it's really challenging to make data-driven decisions related to promoting local food access without having reliable data on how many people are experiencing food insecurity to begin with and where those people are located. Excuse me. And so the question becomes how state level research and data visualization can help address these information gaps while going a little bit further than what we had before, supporting additional analysis that can help advance the council's diverse goals. Next slide. So recognizing that, how we go about doing that really matters for whether the resulting insights are actually accurate and useful for decision makers. We've been gathering information over the last few months around what sorts of data collection efforts there's stakeholder interest in, what is feasible to accomplish given available resources, and from a more technical perspective, some of the strengths and potential drawbacks of different approaches. And so these can be grouped into the 3 general strategies that are shown on this slide. Something I really want to emphasize is that these aren't mutually exclusive, right? They each offer something a little bit different, and ideally they could coexist as part of a broader statewide food security research and evaluation strategy. Next slide, please. The first option that there's been a lot of interest in is directly replacing the data that the USDA had been collecting up until last year by incorporating the same questions into other representative surveys. So on the next slide, we can see what some of those questions look like. And what you can see here is that what this measure tells us is really how a specific outcome that's indicative of food security. So these are the phrases highlighted in yellow, things like whether families were able to eat balanced meals or ever ate less than they felt they should, whether those outcomes were experienced due to a financial access barrier. So those are the phrases highlighted in blue. And so this is, it's a very specific scope of what food security means that's captured by these questions. It doesn't capture everything, but it is a validated survey tool, meaning that, we know from extensive research, it is measuring what it aims to measure. And using something like this or continuing to use this would produce data that's pretty comparable to what we've had from the USDA for over 30 years. And so we're currently tracking some legislation that, as Lauren mentioned, that would require these questions to be included in the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System survey, always a mouthful. It's a statewide survey that's administered by DOH currently. So we're tracking that legislation while also exploring how data could potentially be centralized from some other stakeholders that use this measure as part of their service provision, like food pantries and healthcare providers. Next slide. The second strategy involves visualizing publicly accessible data on the socioeconomic indicators of food insecurity. So rather than directly measuring how many households are experiencing food insecurity through those survey questions, this approach involves predicting an area's risk for food insecurity based on certain geographic or demographic characteristics that we know are correlated. So things like the percentage of the population that has an income below the poverty level or lacks access to reliable transportation. Those indicators can then also be overlaid with, for example, that asset mapping data on different types of access points and agricultural production and levels of state investments to help identify where there might be some gaps and help target interventions. And so the input data for that can come from a really wide variety of sources, and we've been assembling a spreadsheet that tracks a wide range of relevant metrics that could eventually be visualized for New York. Mark will share New Jersey's approach to this in just a minute, but some other examples that offer potential inspiration at a global scale include, on the next slide, we have the Food Systems Dashboard, which is it's a web-based tool that shows about 300 individual country-level indicators on like a really wide range of food systems issues, from the environmental impacts of agricultural production to consumer behavior and diets. And so you can click through these individual metrics and see where each country falls on the map. On the next slide, we have a little bit of a different approach, which is the Global Food Insecurity Index. This is a little less granular, but it's more narrowly focused on food access. And rather than showing individual indicators, it calculates an overall score out of 100 for countries based on weighting a lot of different data sources. This is maybe a little less transparent because you can't see those individual data points, but it could perhaps be more useful for a quick assessment of risk. In general, there are some limits to what these types of indices can do and tell us, but if they're developed with care and extensive research and stakeholder input, they can be something that offers real potential as one tool in the data tool belt. And then last slide. The last approach that we've identified is expanding state-level primary data collection to assess aspects of food insecurity that go beyond just that economic access question, right? So including things like whether the food that's being eaten is nutritious, whether it is physically available in the environment and accessible, whether it's culturally appropriate, whether it's sustainably produced and locally sourced. And so given how broad this is, there's lots and lots of different directions that could take. But one that some of our work group updates will touch on later is a potential shift from collecting data on just program outputs, like pounds of food served, towards also collecting data on experiences and outcomes and impacts, like whether fruit and vegetable consumption actually increased among program clients. It can also involve collecting and incorporating more qualitative data into formal decision-making processes rather than assuming that numbers alone tell the whole story. Neither of those are, as straightforward or simple to implement as they might sound, but it is something there's a lot of interest in and that we're looking forward to continuing to investigate moving forward. So with that background, I will hand it over to Mark Dingleson, who is the Executive Director of the New Jersey Office of the Food Security Advocate. And he will tell you a little bit about how New Jersey has structured their efforts related to food security research and evaluation, which we're hoping can spark some productive discussion about concrete next steps for New York. So take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Ashmita. And my thanks to Kate for inviting me to be with you all today. And it's a pleasure to see some familiar faces on here. Joel, Janelle, great to see you guys. I will try and go through the slide deck as quickly as I can because I do want to share my screen and actually show you our food insecurity index. Kendall, next slide, please. So quick background information, the New Jersey Office of the Food Security Advocate is a codified office. Legislation was created in 2021 to create this office. My role is somewhere between a cabinet member and an ombudsman. We are part of the governor's office. We meet bi-weekly talking about food insecurity strategies. Part of my legislative mandate is to coordinate food security efforts and define food security efforts for the state. But we work very collaboratively with all of our state agencies: environmental protection, human services, children and families. We also work very, very collaboratively with our legislature. So I do meet with the frequently. We also work very closely with our philanthropic community in New Jersey. And last but most important, we also work with community leaders, county government, and other stakeholders. Next slide, please. This is the timeline for how we built out this work. Obviously, we have a very broad legislative mandate: coordinate food security and define food security for an entire state. So we began our work in 2022. I took office on September 26, 2022. And on purpose, we spent the first 2 years building consensus and collaboration. This office is grounded in two things: research and evaluation and community voice. I was very clear with the governor's office and with the legislature that if we are going to build this, I need to create line of sight between all of the great work that's already happening. New Jersey, much like New York, there's a lot of great work happening. A lot of you guys on here are the boots on the ground frontline organizations that are the experts in this work. Our responsibility as a state was to create forums for you all to meet and see each other, and for us to be able to respond to what you were telling us that you needed. One of my main legislative mandates was to create a food security strategic plan for the entire state. I told the governor's office we're not going to do that unless I know we've built a strong community of practice here in New Jersey. So it took 2 years to do it, and we started our official strategic plan strategic planning process in 2024. Next slide, please, Kendall. Very important that I want to share with you all. When we were building this office, one of the first things we had to do is decide on what was the definition of food security that we were going to use. This is the internationally accepted definition of food security from the UN's high-level panel of experts: that food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets dietary and food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle. Ending hunger has nothing to do with giving people food. Right? Feeding people is about giving people food. This definition is what we use to bring New Jersey together, because we decided, and I decided, and Dr. Jenny Shrum, my Director of Research and Evaluation, decided this was the broadest definition of food security that we could find, where multiple stakeholders could see themselves within this work. But most important of all, the 6 dimensions that you guys are looking at on the left-hand side of this definition have validated measurement tools. So we are able to measure food insecurity in New Jersey using this definition. I just emphasized to the governor's office about a week and a half ago, and to the ledge, we can't actually beat the enemy if we actually don't know the enemy. And if we're not measuring the enemy, then we're not going to be able to fully understand the enemy. So this is why this definition is critical to everything that we're doing. Next slide, please. I just want to very quickly give everybody a snapshot of New Jersey's food security strategic plan. Next slide. We crafted a strategic plan that's expressly meant to not be prescriptive. When I was running my frontline organization, the one thing I hated is when somebody in government or philanthropy would come in and say, hey, we think you should do the work this way. I would always say, hold my beer. I wouldn't say it out loud. But what we did with this strategic plan is we basically wanted to create to elevate the work that was already going on, create guidelines that could create that line of sight that we were talking about, and really capture the vision and the community of practice that I said that we had been building in New Jersey for the last 2 years before we started strategic planning process. The top half of this pyramid is what our strategic plan will do. It was meant to create a vision with specified focus areas based on feedback from community and research that had already been done. And under that, outline strategies and uplift strategies that had been lifted in all of that. Here in New Jersey, we are now at the tactics and action plan phase. We are now releasing RFPs and creating county level coalitions with county government associated with the strategic plan. Next slide. This was the process for the strategic plan. And again, a lot of this was driven by a lot of the data, the research that we had been doing prior to this. More than 20 reports had already been written on how to make New Jersey food secure. So we synthesized the takeaways from those 20 reports, and then we established an executive committee and gathered feedback from them for about 6 months. And the executive committee was comprised of state agencies, philanthropy, healthcare, community organizations, agriculture. Synthesized their feedback, matched the feedback of the 20 reports with the feedback of the executive committee, created our focus areas, and then put that out for public comment. After the public comment period ended, Governor Sherrill greenlit the release of the strategic plan in March of this year, and we launched the plan and the accompanying implementation toolkit soon after. Next slide, please. This is the QR code if you would like to see New Jersey's food security strategic plan. And I won't read them out loud, but these are the 5 focus areas that are captured in the plan. You will very quickly see a lot of this is informed by the data that we've been collecting. Focus area 1 is especially about optimizing programs through data-driven decision making and creating data congruency. But I also want to really point out focus area 5, we're talking about creating more resilient systems. Here, we're talking about climate change. We're talking about clean water as part of New Jersey's food security strategic plan. Next slide. Associated with this, and again, these slides will be available so you can scan these QR codes later. We did release an implementation toolkit. Next slide. No point in releasing a strategic plan if you're not giving people a roadmap for how they can actually use the plan and take it from theory to practical applications. Our implementation toolkit helps organizations to either frame current programs or create new programs through the strategic plan through these 6 steps, of which very important is building a logic model and planning an evaluation strategy so that we're actually gathering that data and creating line of sight between all of these programs. Next slide. But creating a strategic plan and an implementation toolkit without accompanying elements and materials that can help our community of practice. And when I say community of practice, here in New Jersey, we have a statewide food security summit that OFSA produces. It's 100% free for any New Yorkers that want to come across the border and join us. I pay for it through my budget. So when I say community of practice at our summit, we're gathering healthcare executives and professionals, farmers, legislators, our speaker comes, the governor's office comes. We gather everybody together and we talk about this work. So for our community of practice, creating a strategic plan and an implementation toolkit is great, but we wanted to give additional tools that, again, grounds everything in data and community voice. So both the quantitative data and the qualitative data. Next slide, please. The first tool that we created, and this is in no specific order, but the one I want to highlight the most, and here's the QR code. We created a New Jersey statewide food insecurity index using ArcGIS mapping. Now, here in New Jersey, I will point out, we elected to use publicly available data sets. We used about 26 block group level data sets from ACS and about 11 census tract levels from CDC places. I'll show it to you all. Our methodology is captured in this. What did this basically do is it created a visualization, a powerful visual tool that shows high likelihood of food insecurity throughout New Jersey. And what this has done, one, it has validated what our frontline organizations already know. When I go into communities and I'm meeting with community coalitions and we show their county and we show the darkest areas that are predicting the highest likelihood of food insecurity, I've got frontline organizations saying, yep, that tracks, that absolutely tracks. We're seeing that that's our high need area. But now we are able to visualize this and show these high need areas. During the government shutdown and SNAP crisis in November of 2025, I was working out of our Regional Operations Intelligence Center, and our Office of Emergency Management overlaid this map with all of the information of where they were deploying emergency management services during the crisis. That's one use case example of this. Another use case, we have county government now exporting the map because this map is exportable, and they're now overlaying this at the county level with all of where are their FQHCs, where are their food pantries, where are their food pharmacies, where are their mobile farmers markets. So many use cases for this. And we did elect to use publicly available data sets because it makes it more sustainable, right? And I'll go through that when I show you guys the index. Next slide, please. Along with the Food Insecurity Index, we released it's a very, very easy read. It's a food security primer that talks about the 6 dimensions of food security and then connects current existing programs in New Jersey to the definition of food security that we're using and the 6 dimensions. Again, it's a very easy read that allows people to see themselves in this work, whether they're in healthcare, philanthropy, agriculture, and other sectors. So again, another tool that we're using. Next slide. Along with that, we have also created a data chart book. Who doesn't love a good chart book, right? One of the main reasons we created a data chart book, and this data chart book, is because we believe at OFSA that no one data point should rule the entire conversation about how to make an individual, a family, a community, a state more food secure. Next slide, please. So this is what the data chart book looks like. We break the data chart book down into how we currently measure food insecurity in New Jersey, what are the impacts of food insecurity in New Jersey, and what are data sets that show social determinants of health. When you go through the data chart book, we give you a definition of the data point we're talking about. We give you a scan of quick facts about that data point, and then we show you what the county levels look like through maps and through graphs. And then we also give you a review of the methodology for the data point that we're reviewing, but we also talk about its limitations, and then we recommend other data sources. So again, this is a tool that we are using so that even at the county level and at the organizational level, our community of practice can make data-driven decisions about programming. Next slide, please. Again, this is what I mentioned. These are the metrics that the data chart book are divided into. Next slide, please. The great thing that I credit Dr. Jenny for doing this in our team is we also created county level data chart books, so you can review the statewide data chart book. But then we have also given all 21 counties their own county profile based off of the data chart book. So you'll see you can go through each county in New Jersey and see everybody's data chart book. Use case for this, I was just at one of our counties' food security coalition meetings that's headed by the county administrator, and at the meeting was the head of substance abuse services, the head of human services, the head of board of social services, the 4 anchor organizations, including the 2 food banks, the university, the healthcare system, and we were talking about what interventions we could strategically create in that county. And the main thing that we had on screen was their county profile from the data chart book. Next slide, please. Last thing that I'll show, and this is usable for everybody. This isn't just New Jersey. We created a public data catalog, which obviously in this shifting federal landscape, some of the data sets that we're including in our public data catalog, those links are no longer live. Next slide, please. In that data chart book, you can basically search New Jersey hosted data sets, also national data sets, and then you can scroll through them to pull any of the chart books that you're looking for. Now, what is the purpose of all of this? This is what I truly believe OFSA was created to do here in New Jersey. I told Governor Murphy when I first took office, there's a lot of work already happening here. We just need line of sight into each other. When I was running my food bank, I would have killed to have line of sight into my Vegetable Growers Association, because I was spending $700,000 a year buying local produce. So I wanted that line of sight. I wanted line of sight between the people that were doing safe, stable, humane housing and the people that were doing SNAP navigation. So OFSA is built to create those lines of sight. And when we create those lines of sight, that's not enough. What we are able to do through this office is not force collaboration, but inspire collaboration, because everybody wants to do this work and wants to do this work. I have very, very rarely met somebody who's like, nah, I don't want to partner with anybody. I don't want to do it. I'm just going to do this on my own. We all want to do this together, but ain't nobody got the time to be looking for the connections themselves, right? And so here in New Jersey, we have created an office that can herd the cats and say, hey, now that you're connected, how can we collaborate? And then it's our responsibility as the governor's office to show up with our state agencies, with philanthropy, and show that, put our time and our money where our mouth is and say, we're here to collaborate with you. And through those two things, the crazy bet that I'm making is that that's how we create consensus. I have a rule: if I show up at a meeting and you haven't told me within the first, 30 minutes, what is the problem we're trying to solve? How are we going to solve it? And what are the resources that we have in order to solve it? I'm probably not coming back to your meeting. But if we do that out of the gate and we do it well and we do it together, the crazy bet that I'm making as New Jersey's food security advocate is that that's how we can create not complete consensus, but enough consensus between groups of people and groups of professionals and groups of well-meaning leaders, so that we can actually make a dent in this work. I will also say, and then Kendall, you can stop the share, and then I will try to share my the Food Insecurity Index. We are also doing, on top of everything that I showed you, we will be doing primary data collection based on the 6 dimensions of food security. We did a 2,000 person sample last year. Obviously, that's not a representative sample, so we are going to be expanding that this year as well. So thank you for having me. Kendall, you can stop your share, and then I will now try to see if it works. It's been a minute since I've used WebEx. Come on, New York, what are we doing here? Just kidding. Let's see here. We're going to share a window. All right, so when I do not see you guys on screen, so somebody just speak up if you have a question, but I just want to, thank you. I want to show you, this is New Jersey's Food Insecurity Index. First thing I'll show you, when you go on the index, we give you the methodology that we created, that we went through to create this. One of the things that I love about what you guys are doing in New York State is you're following exactly what we did. We picked the publicly available data sets, but then we had meetings in 3 counties with stakeholders, with county government, and said, what do you think? Does this work? And through that's when we were able to break everything down, which eventually led us to the 8 segments that are captured in the Food Insecurity Index. Not only did we go to those 3 counties, once we had the 3 counties mapped out and we knew we were going statewide, we had multiple meetings with stakeholders throughout the state to say, what do you think as well? Again, very important to listen to the leaders that are actually doing the work. So, and again, this is export. You can export any of this. You can overlay. You can play around with it. We are also available to work with you all as you talk about asset mapping and data mapping as well. So one of the first things I'll show you guys that's really usable. Let's pick Essex County, which houses Newark, which is one of our main areas. You can zoom in on a county on our map, and again, it goes all the way down to the census block group level. The darker the color, the higher the likelihood of food insecurity. One of the most useful things to creating this visualization, especially once we start overlaying legislative districts on top of this, I can now meet with legislators and say, now let's talk about CACFP, now let's talk about CEP, now let's talk about SNAP in your particular legislative district. Let's look at the high likelihood of food insecurity in those districts when overlaid with all of that information. One of the most important things here is our segment filters. If you actually click on this button, you can see all of our segments. Now, I will point out emergency food output is not one of the segments on this map. We talk about transportation, housing cost burden, uninsured individuals, diet-related chronic diseases. We also talk about SNAP underutilization, single-parent households, homebound individuals. So this captures this highly complex socioeconomic issue that is called food insecurity. When you click on our segment filters, I'll just click off the food insecurity filter. Let's go with, since we were talking about SNAP underutilization. So this is SNAP underutilization in Essex County, right? And what has tracked when we're doing this, when we use the index in meetings, I was just having this with one of our largest health systems. If you overlay SNAP underutilization with food insecurity index, with a food insecurity index, the darkest areas for food insecurity are also the darkest areas for SNAP underutilization, which tracks with what we all know, right? Access to benefits and people not accessing benefits can have a detrimental effect on somebody's food security. So I want to stop there. Come back to you guys so I can see your faces. And say that's what we're doing in New Jersey. We are here to support all of our state partners. I have been very grateful to have met Kate and Ashmita, and we remain committed to partnering with you all. We learn as much from you, and I learn as much from Kate as she learns from us. And New Jersey, we're all going to win this if we're doing it together. So it's a pleasure to be with you all, and New Jersey's here for you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark. During the presentations from Ashmita and Mark, we did have a couple comments and questions in the chat, so just wanted to elevate those.
Sure.
Tessa shared a great resource through a federal grant that Farm On is actually aggregating farm fresh produce and putting together CSA boxes for women and children at daycare centers, many people who lost SNAP benefits. So we can share any resources there. We also had Michelle pointed out about just making sure that questions, survey questions include whether a participant has access to kitchen, running water, cooking equipment to actually prepare the food that's being provided. And then Allison had asked how can groups support efforts to get states to add food security data collection to statewide surveys. I know we do have legislation that's pending right now to expand the behavior risk factor surveillance system survey. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. But are there other questions from our panelists? And you can feel free to raise your hand and we'll unmute you. We do have a couple minutes before we can take a break, and then we can dive into more of this information and discussion in our work groups.
Kate, I do see a question about how New Jersey arrived at the SNAP underutilization number. So what I would recommend is when you guys get the slides and you hop on our food insecurity index, go to our methodology section, which is under the home tab, and we outline everything. Again, this uses publicly available data sets, and then we narrowed it down in meetings with our stakeholders and to create our 8 segments. So everything is through publicly available data. And if what you're looking for, Sarah, is not captured in the methodology section, happy to meet and bring my research team into the discussion about that as well.
Thanks, Mark. This is really helpful, and I know again we've got a lot going on at multiple state agencies. Really appreciative of both Ashmita's analysis of what things are available and the ingredients we have to actually assess, and then Mark, some examples of how New Jersey has done this. We, with the council, really try to situate this role of bringing people together, sharing ideas, and then, as Commissioner said, connecting the dots and working through specific issues during our work groups. So really appreciate hearing everything that you're doing and giving us some springboards and things to talk about. So our next up in our agenda is going to be to take a 15-minute break. We've taken in a lot of information of what's going on now, what can be in the future. So take a short break and we're going to come back at 11:30. If you do have any questions for those that are viewing, just a reminder, you can put those into the Q&A feature. Kendall will elevate them. And then for our panelists, you can put items into the chat. So again, thanks so much, Mark, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys soon.
Everybody at 11:30, 11:25. All right, so welcome back, everyone. The afternoon session is going to get into our work group updates, as well as some discussion of recommendations that we'll begin to explore for our 2026 annual report. Just as a reminder, we have 4 work groups that the Council on Hunger and Food Policy uses to divide up its work and focus on different stakeholder needs. The Economic Vitality Work Group is to ensure New York farms are thriving and can sustain food production long term. Food as Medicine is a purpose to improve the nutritional quality of foods provided to people in need. Food assistance networks to strengthen connections between supply chains and organizations helping people in need, and the food access programs to leverage public dollars to address the needs of food insecure people across New York State. Our first work group update is the Economic Vitality Work Group. Julie Suarez is the Associate Dean for Land Grant Affairs from Cornell University's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. She does so much work with us and sadly cannot be here for this portion of the meeting, so I said I would provide an update on her behalf. So Kendall, if you go to the next slide, I can give an overview. So here's some of the highlights of what the Economic Vitality Work Group has been focused on for this year. First, expanding food processing capacity across New York State. The work group was very encouraged by nearly 3.5 billion manufacturing support to expand the dairy processing across the state. The work group's also thinking about how to attract more diverse portfolio of fruit and vegetable processors. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of enhancing our procurement opportunities for those folks. We're also exploring opportunities for developing growth for specialty crops and improving their market access, and increasing connection more closely with Empire State Development. Our partner Allison Stark is on the call. Thanks, Allison, to explore opportunities for funding expansions of processing and really incentivizing more processors into the state. Second, we're really thinking a lot about scientific research to address climate change. We saw some significant events this past winter with ice and frost damage impacting aquaculture growers on Long Island and fruit growers. We also are evaluating the short and long-term impacts of federal cuts to research and extension, and noting the need for sustained funding on research to continue to be competitive and innovate solutions to our latest issues. Third, replacing lost federal local food purchasing program grant funding. Lauren Williams had alluded earlier to the local food purchase agreement program cuts and potential for revival of that program under a new act at the federal level in the Farm Bill. So looking forward to tracking that and seeing where we can leverage opportunities. Also grateful for Nourish New York, which is a great and valuable procurement program, as well as a supply for the emergency feeding network. Also just worried in that category about the loss of revenue, and we heard about that in one of our work group meetings, loss of revenue for farmers who are selling at markets and accepting SNAP benefits through the Farmers Market Nutrition Program. and also selling into the New York Food for New York Families program, which was funded through local food purchase agreement at the federal level. And finally, leading into a presentation from Henry Talmadge on our team, the group is really thinking about optimizing procurement opportunities, really focused on New York fruits, but also vegetables and specialty crops, and interested in collaborating with ag and markets to streamline access to Executive Order 32, farm to school, and other opportunities. So if we go to the next slide, and then Henry will provide an update specifically on Executive Order 32.
Great, thank you, Kate, and I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to this group. My name is Henry Talmadge. I work with Department of Ag and Markets as Senior Advisor on Food Policy and Procurement. I'm the team lead for Executive Order 32, but I also work with the other procurement programs involved in the department. We'll go to the next slide, please. So just as kind of a brief overview of Executive Order 32, it was formed in 2023 when Governor Hochul announced this initiative, and the objective of Executive Order 32 is to require state agencies that purchase food to purchase 30% of the food they purchase from New York farms, and that's by the end of 2027. And I'll get to the kind of the sliding scale with that. But as we like to say in government, definitions really matter. So with regard to the specifics of Executive Order 32, there's really two segments or two types of food that are counted. First is New York State food, and that's unprocessed food that's 100, that is in raw products. So think of a whole apple. In order to qualify for Executive Order 32, that has to be 100% grown, harvested, and produced in New York State. And then there's New York State processed food, and for the purposes of EO 32, the New York State processed food has to be comprised of over 51% of raw materials that were grown and harvested in New York. And this is the big difference between some of the other programs, capital and the processing of those foods have to take place within a facility that's located in New York State. So think here, a burger patty comprised of 51% New York beef that's actually processed in New York State. So that's the lens through which Executive Order 32 is presented to state agencies and asked to comply with. So next slide, please. So I mentioned the sliding scale. This has different targets for the end of each year. You can see the first year in 2023 was 5% target. In 2024, it jumped to 15%, and then 20, 25, and 30% for each of the last 3 years. You can go to the next slide, please. The most recent data that we have right now, the way this data is compiled, it's for the calendar year. So for 2025, the calendar year is obviously completed. The reporting has gone to OGS, and we are in the process of compiling that for the 2025 data. But for 2024, this is from the Food Metrics report that the Office of Government of General Services puts out. There were 63 state agencies that reported. 40 of those that actually purchased food was just $593 million worth of total food purchases, and 88 million plus of New York State food purchases, which include the raw product, New York State food, and the New York State processed food. So that's and that represents 15% of the total. Next slide. Okay, so as you know, as the commissioner likes to say, it gets harder as we go to get to the percentages as we close out kind of where we're trying to get to on the 30% objective for EO32. As I mentioned, there's a difference between fresh versus processed food, and also the audience of state agencies. There are a few state agencies like the Department of Corrections and the Office of Mental Health that have cook chill facilities who actually do purchase raw product and include that in their production. But a lot of state agencies purchase at least semi-processed or processed food. So one of the challenges that we have seen with this is that the fresh side of things, apples and product like that, has a somewhat limited market for that because of the way state agencies use food. That's not 100% across the board, but it does impact the ability for agencies to comply with it. And another component here is, as we started to talk about a little bit, New York State agencies are subject to the general procurement law that exists for New York State and administered through the Office of General Services. And so they are required to follow the provisions of that law, including the low price requirement, where they have to choose a low bid or low price alternative whenever given the option. Many of the state agencies purchase off of the central contracts, which are run by or are used by broadline distributors. There's 5 central contracts across the state, and state agencies can purchase from those. One of the challenges we've seen is that it's been hard to get those broadline distributors to fully embrace carrying more New York State processed food, or even New York State food for that matter, because it has to fit into their business model, which is in some cases at the very least a regional, but often national or even international business model. So focusing on New York product just to their New York customers is an opportunity that we're still trying to have them fully embrace, and we're making some progress there. And then, as you heard Lauren talk about today from a legislative perspective, some possible changes to the discretionary thresholds that state agencies must follow in order to purchase off contract. And that is an opportunity for growth. We're seeing more and more interest by state agencies in doing that, but that has been an effective challenge to it because of the rules, especially kind of the rules of review for purchases over $50,000. We're hopeful that some of these changes that are put forth in this legislation will free up some opportunity for state agencies to purchase off contract, which will allow them to specify New York product and make it easier for them to purchase that way. I have here food hubs listed. We just had a procurement advisory group meeting in April, and we invited the food hubs that have been working through the Food Hub Collaborative across New York State to come and make presentations. And there's a lot of opportunity in this discretionary purchase space for food hubs and individual farmers to participate in selling more direct to state agencies. And so we're starting to see that happen. And so finally, I'll just touch base on a few things here. One thing we have discovered, and this is not new. I mean, you know, back in the day, we used to talk about, well, all we have to do is introduce farmers to buyers and then get out of their way, and this will just happen kind of organically. We all know that it's more complicated than that. And one of the real focuses here, and Executive Order 32 highlights it, there's no additional funding that goes with Executive Order 32 for state agencies to comply. So it's a little bit different than, say, the 30% Initiative Farm to School program, which provides a financial incentive to participate. There is no additional money there to do it. So what we see is that when, and because state agencies are still subject to the low cost provisions in the general procurement law, that it really does matter. Efficiency really does matter throughout the whole process, not just from the farm perspective, but from the food manufacturing, from the aggregation and distribution model. So this idea of cost per unit delivered or cost per unit sold really highlights how important efficiency is at the ability to get the volume up, to drive the cost per unit down and the cost per unit delivered down. And we're starting to see real headway there, as I mentioned, with food hubs, but also from food processors and manufacturers as some of the economic viability tools that Kate talked about are put in place. That opens up a lot of opportunity because, you know, people want to buy New York, they want to do it, but if the budget doesn't allow, it's a real barrier. So the idea of efficiency and cost per unit and larger production runs and full trucks really does come into play in a program like EO32 and frankly on really all the institutional procurement programs. So with that, I'll stop. I know there's a lot there, and we just touched the surface, but I just kind of give you a little bit of an update. So thank you.
Thanks, Henry. You know, it's funny, we just received the presentation before the break about mapping, right? And all the asset mapping that's been done. One of the wonderful projects from our next work group lead, Natasha Pernica, is the Food Connect map and the Food as Medicine Supplier map. And these are all things that we can put together to connect the dots and make sure that we're coordinating and working together to advance these initiatives. So thanks for your presentation. I'll pass it over to Natasha, and Kendall, I believe we're going to have Natasha enable screen share so she can review her slides.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I'll go ahead and share a few slides. This has been a wonderful meeting so far. I just want to really commend the Department of Ag and all of our state agencies and staff members who are supporting this and sharing information. So I just wanted to give a shout out. I just have a couple things to share. I hope, oh, there we go. I haven't shared using this platform before. Okay, so just a reminder of our...
I'll just pause for a second, Natasha. If you
sure.
go to the bottom right and just click on like the little slide presentation, we'll be able to see your presentation a little bit better. It's next to the plus and minus of zooming in.
Okay.
Looks
can
like
you see it okay like this? Is it on the actual screen? Oh, sorry, I should.
That's okay. I think
Bear
we'll
with
be
me,
able to
folks.
see it a little bit better. So if you go all the way to the bottom right where it says 81%, and then you go over,
I see. Yep. Oh, here we go.
There's the little screen, like the old type of screen that we used to have to present slides. And if you click on that, it'll show us. So go over a little bit more to the left next to the minus sign.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so again, our work group goal is strengthening connections between supply chain and organizations helping people in need. I just wanted to review the Council on Hunger and Food Policy recommendation categories in which we're framing our discussion and policy recommendations in this work group. So one was communication, ensuring accurate and timely communication between government and stakeholders. Crisis mitigation, evaluating resources to address overload on the food assistance network during crisis. This significantly came to head last November, well, really October and November at the federal SNAP delay. And so we know that we should be expecting ongoing crisis as different levels of federal changes impact our community's need to access food resources in greater demand. Number 3 is partnerships. So it's providing resources that enhance partner connection and collaboration, and looking ahead, proactively addressing funding cuts and issues that may surface. I am going to stop sharing it. I'm going to switch because one of the presentations that we had, and I want to thank Stacy Hale from Department of Health. I wanted to share just a couple of her slides that she shared with our work group. And so I'm going to, there's some really, and again, this goes back to data. Okay, I'm just going to share this, and I think Stacy's on, so thank you for sharing this with us. This is data from Department of Health tracking emergency meals served, specifically through the contracts that they run, Nourish New York and HIPNAP, Hunger Prevention Nutrition Assistance Program. Something that I think that is important for all of us to note is the really significant increase, and this just represents those meals served that are tracked through this particular grant contract. So when you look at 2019 to early 2020, we were at 258,000 meals served with 37 million requests for assistance. And I think it's important to note, obviously, there was a huge increase in 2020 and early 2021. This was before the federal tax credits and assistance and bolstering to SNAP happened. When the federal assistance ended, you can see a slight decrease in the 2021-2022. Excuse me, that was when the federal assistance was happening in 2021 and 2022. So there was a slight decrease at that point. But then ever since 21 and 22, the request for assistance and total meals served just continues to increase. And so if you compare, we in our work continue to compare from 2019 to current because we have grown in need for emergency food services so significantly. We're never going to go back to, pre-2020 times, but also really needing to recognize the resources and logistics needed at this much greater community need. The other thing, and I'm going to stop sharing this slideshow, and Stacy, thank you for putting that together. The other thing that I wanted to share from there is the general conversations that happened afterwards. We were incredibly grateful to Governor Hochul and the state for providing $65 million in emergency one-time funds in response to the SNAP crisis, which obviously helped substantially. But there were some challenges in as far as effectively responding to a crisis swiftly. However, one of the things that has come out of this emergency food response is there has been some innovation and funding for alternative, and I say alternative, but it really is the future of food distribution efforts in meeting people where they're at, in particular, with people who have transportation barriers, immigrants, or people of color that are not comfortable with increased ICE activity, a lot of different barriers for people accessing brick and mortar food pantries. So some of the models that this emergency funding has supported is increasing pop-up food pantry distributions, increasing purchasing of food, which organizations across the state are reporting record number food budgets in order to purchase the amount of food necessary to meet community needs. Also, there was more targeted direct deliveries, focusing on emergency food boxes, as well as supporting school backpack programs and school pantries. So I just wanted to highlight that while this crisis was incredibly straining on our charitable food system and frontline providers, it did give us an opportunity for the state to support the frontline food providers through areas that typically aren't funded through traditional hunger prevention and nutrition assistance program resources, which I think is important for us to note. The other conversations really, so again, the crisis mitigation, we talked a lot about philanthropy, interest in addressing increased food insecurity. While it is high, the resources are limited given the volume of need. So in addition to direct support, donors and businesses are increasingly engaging in advocacy to encourage New York State investments in food access programs, which is a positive for us. I have to say, and I know I've said this before, but I have never seen the nutrition security and anti-hunger advocates as well organized as they are today, which I think is great because we all recognize that we all need to lift each other up together. And it's important to continue to build momentum across. We also talked about funding gaps are not just federal, but public sector, and this is where the council can play a key role in identifying areas that really need to be expanded with stakeholders' expertise. We talked about frontline providers needing more funding flexibility to explore innovative approaches and better meet unique community needs, as I kind of shared a little bit about the emergency funding that was distributed. Money is needed more than just for purchasing food, which is important to note. Providers also need resources to support operations, staffing, drivers, volunteer coordination, logistics. And we also talked again about expanded data collection, which has been a theme throughout the different conversations today. We also discussed investments needed in supporting network building and resource sharing between providers. And we talked a lot about decentralization, which can lead to inequity when counties have varying resources and handle crisis differently. I think, obviously New York State is a very large state, and we know that it can be challenging to have a state response, like a state level response quickly. So oftentimes decentralization allows communities to provide solutions that work for their community. However, there is a lot of inequity that can occur based on how different counties determine is the best way to take action, or maybe not even take action at all. So just to note, we did have conversations about that. And also that stakeholders feel the council should be activated more often as a crisis response mechanism, and definitely appreciate the communication resource that the council in. We discussed state investment in communications and outreach could bolster food assistance organizations' ability to connect clients with relevant programs and resources. So there's been a lot of different streams of activity that are trying to help connect clients with relevant programs and resources. We talked about bolstering the New York State Food Connect map that Kate had shared a little bit about earlier. I'm going to just share a very brief demonstration for anyone who is not familiar with the New York State Food Connect map. This started in 2020. And I'm really pleased to report that we have some new data sources on the map. We started this map as a capital region initiative. However, when COVID happened, several state agencies reached out looking for one source of information about getting people food assistance. We partnered with Department of Health and appreciate that ongoing partnership for data on food pantries and community meal sites. We also partner with OTDA to have SNAP and WIC sites listed. Our newest additions are Department of Ag. We now have farmers markets that accept SNAP and WIC. And we also now have Office of Aging congregate meal sites for older adults. So very excited. There is a database that hosts all of the data, and then it is data visualization in the map. So for example, I have the food pantry layer activated right now. If you click, you can see the organization, general information as well. And we have now added an additional feature that allows viewers to get directions using a mapping system for walking, bus, or driving to the locations. So again, we have food pantries, community meals. We also have the statewide WIC and SNAP and farmers markets. So there's a lot there. So we're hoping to continue, well, we're not hoping to, we are continuing to build this resource as we get user feedback to improve the user experience as well as increasing the data. And so we look forward to seeing how this map can be utilized in conjunction with other initiatives to really increase nutrition security in the state of New York. Those were our major discussions. I have to say I am always honored to host this work group. It's an incredibly thoughtful group of people who really are thinking about how do we make changes to improve on a state level, working collectively. So thank you for letting me share out our recent conversations at our work group. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Natasha. As you said, this group of food assistance network providers is just so powerful. And the one thing that I really highlighted on my notes here was, making sure that we provide support and leveraging those efforts that are occurring in communities and really connecting those with state agencies. So thanks for your leadership on that. Next up, we have Ellie Wilson, and Kendall's going to share Ellie's slides so she can do an update for the Food as Medicine work group.
Hi all, this has been such a dynamic presentation. There we go. So echoing a few of our presenters so far, one of the ways dietitians work is the very first competency is assessment. And I know many of you that are on this have heard me, kind of work very hard to try to get our resources mapped, to, understand our data access and supports. And as we prepared for today, one of the things I really hoped to try to get alignment on is, what are our assets and what are their changes? Because we know many of our resources are being impacted by federal policy changes and of course state. So trying to put together a way that all of our work groups and resources and stakeholders work together. This image is a kind of a wraparound view of how we deliver nutrition and food security supports. So in the center is the pyramid, which is based on a pyramid originally developed just to outline what are the resources, population health level resources for developing and delivering food as medicine in different tiers by the need of that cohort or group. And we've definitely worked very hard to support produce prescription programs and our medically supportive groceries, et cetera, because these are our folks that are really the most challenged with nutrition security. So I just so appreciated Henry Talmadge's comment about definitions and making sure that we can get alignment through all of our systems on healthy food information is just as important as getting healthy food to our populations. It's been a real journey to work, and we work very closely, the New York State Academy, with the Department of Health on the social care demonstration. That nutrition is the highest need has become clear to all of us, and ensuring that we can deliver the food and the information and counseling that individuals need to make use of this is really important to systems. Working with the SNAP Ed team, the technical team, we're working to rescue our nutrition information resources. And there could be a whole new partnership opportunity throughout all the agencies and stakeholders to expand access to that information. And also even talking with Liz with the Office of New Americans, we definitely have some opportunities to expand using those assets and translating them into all of the languages that we know are culturally important across the state, making sure our supply chains as well meet the needs of our specific populations is just as critical. So it really comes into a detail level that we haven't really addressed very robustly, but we could. We encountered this in the Food Council, one of the iterations back in 2012, and ran up against the state mandates on lowest price, et cetera. But I'm really encouraged by what Henry shared with potential capacity to expand our nutrition supports through state food system alignment. That does require that we get a little more granular with the data, and so with the food product data. So, and ensure that we deliver education in as many ways possible that aligns our definitions. Again, going to Henry's comment, definitions are, and marketing information and nutrition information are really challenging for a lot of folks. And if we align better, then I think that we can move the needle towards ensuring all of the business models can be met and all of the care models can be met. But we need to get alignment on our baseline nutrition information and our capacity to deliver up through those tiers of care. Could we forward, Ashmita? I attempted to highlight some of the programs I know are specifically at risk with federal challenges. I'm probably missing significant elements here, but it was really just trying to illustrate the relationships. And I think that Natasha just pointed some of that out as well. I'm not sure who knows the data, but with the loss of SNAP Ed, we lose a baseline and aggregate year over year average of 3 million individual touch education opportunities with our most vulnerable populations. That is, I think, going to have some significant downstream impacts, but we have opportunities to maybe wrap around and redesign how we deliver nutrition information. I know that there has been some energy in the legislature and in NYS to expand nutrition information. We have a lot happening, and it's really exciting to see how much is going on with New York State Ag in the classroom, and the fact that we actually do have dietitians in the systems a little bit more robustly than we've had in the past. I'm really hopeful that we can go right with what Commissioner said was collaboration going forward so that we can get some alignment on definitions and on criteria without getting too restrictive, but making sure that we can really deliver through each system what that tier of need is when it comes to nutritious and delicious food. So that's really, where I'm putting the eggs in my basket, and hoping that we can continue to build out the nutrition elements of all the work the Food Council has done. We're still pretty rare nationally. Food security and nutrition security are conflated, and it depends on who's serving what population. But with all of the opportunity of this, getting better at delivering higher quality or more nutritious food, plus the information people need to trust that it's safe and that it's actionable, will help us again lift all boats. So I hope that's helpful, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to learn and get some connections that we can start having more robust conversations on this. I do want to give a shout out to Shayna and the SNAP-Ed technical team. We have been working on this since the fall, when we identified this, the loss of SNAP-Ed as critical to the food as medicine resources, and they have been fantastic with collaborating and trying to explore some ideas and opportunities while they are, kind of doing their work of ensuring they can rescue everything the USDA is allowing them to keep with scrubbed logos and things along that line, so that we can redeploy them creatively and really retain those investments that have been made going back to, as Natasha pointed out, 2019 and 2020, when COVID pushed so much of this online. So I appreciate everyone's time today, and thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Ellie. I'm not sure if you could see it, but there was a lot of hearts and thumbs up coming during your presentation. So much appreciated resources and information you're sharing. Also in the chat, Natasha has shared a link to the New York State Food as Medicine food supplier directory for food as medicine. So we can circulate that following the meeting also. And there's also an invitation for suppliers or buyers to engage with that map and make sure that they're listed if needed.
If I could add one more
Sure.
comment. With the expansion of capacity for hot food, this is a unique opportunity, but it will also require some collaboration to ensure that we at least have some baseline information. With, folks, everybody loves rotisserie chicken. It can be a very ubiquitous resource. Understanding what that means and how to ensure that our solutions are not creating more problems is kind of imperative. Again, we want to meet everyone's needs in business model, and we also want to meet individual needs or equip them with the capacity to modify some of those products so that they really do meet their needs. There are a lot of pathways for this. We need an opportunity to bring that type of information together. And I would really welcome being able to speak to anyone who is working in procurement about the opportunities of ensuring nutrition can really meet everyone's needs. So thanks again.
Thanks so much. So we have one more work group update, and then I put in the chat a couple times that as a reminder, we're going to open up for discussion for about 15 minutes after our last work group update. We won't share slides, so we can kind of create the Brady Bunch mode of everyone being able to chat together. So if you've had questions burning or thoughts and comments, please have those ready. And if you're able to turn on your cameras at 12:30, that would be wonderful to add to the discussion, have a robust conversation about all of the things that we've heard today. So now I'll pass it to Krista Hestorfer, who's the work group lead for food access programs.
Thanks so much, Kate. And just want to reiterate the thank you to the state agency folks and guests who shared such great information earlier in the meeting, and particularly Bill and Teddy from OTDA for the ABOD presentation. Our work group has been lucky to receive a whole lot of time generously gifted to us from state agency folks over the last few months, especially OTDA, ONA, folks at DOH, to really help us understand and navigate these changes to SNAP. If you head to my first slide, we have, of course, been focusing on the changes to SNAP, both ABOD and non-citizen eligibility. And our work group's key takeaway is really similar to something that the commissioner said right at the start of the call, that we can't over communicate, especially right now. One of the primary value adds of a council like this is that communication internally with each other, and also strategizing about how we can communicate effectively externally with folks who need to receive this information with networks across the state. So Kate knows that I'm going to cheat a little bit with my update and provide just this much update, and then use most of the time to hopefully hear from all of you about the communications that you're already doing, where you see gaps, what opportunities we might have to make sure that New Yorkers are getting the information and resources they need. But before we turn to some discussion questions, I just wanted to highlight some of the key types of communications that our work group has really been focused on. Of course, we think it's really important for both state agencies and community partners to be raising awareness about the ABOD rules in general and what to expect. What Bill said about you're going to get a notice in the mail, read it carefully, that's a pretty basic message. Keep an eye on your mail, but that's an important thing for people to know, that that's how the communication is going to come to them, and that's what they need to do. We also are focusing on highlighting the exemptions to ABOD. We know that there are people who maybe have an exemption now that they didn't when they were screened during their initial application or recertification. Maybe somebody who is pregnant now, they weren't then. And so we want to make sure that everybody knows what exemptions are available for ABOD and how to document those exemptions so that they are held harmless as these rules roll out. We also want to share resources that help people to comply with the requirements if they are not exempt. Those include some of the workforce supports that Bill mentioned, but also I know that Joel had shared some information about how to find volunteer opportunities, and we know that those types of communications efforts are happening across the state. Beyond ABOD, there's a lot of communication that's going to be needed to clarify the changes to SNAP eligibility for non-citizens, especially our humanitarian immigrants, refugees, asylees. And a big part of that communication is being clear that it's not that all refugees and asylees no longer qualify for SNAP. They may still qualify if they are, if they've obtained legal permanent resident status since, or if they fall into some of these other categories. So working with organizations like ONA to make sure that we're hitting the mark on those communications, that we're getting the word out to the right folks, and that we're, it's 101, right? Like getting these communications out in the right languages for the folks who need to receive them. Also see opportunities to connect New Yorkers with some of those existing resources in the communities, SNAP navigators, NOEP coordinators, so that they can get one-on-one assistance with understanding ABOD rules, understanding non-citizen eligibility changes if they need some help. And of course, there's the unfortunate reality that some people will lose SNAP benefits. So part of our role is making sure that they're aware of the other food resources that remain available regardless of your work hours or your immigration status. And fortunately, there are some great programs that don't consider either of those things. Summer meal programs for kids, summer EBT benefits, WIC remains available for many families, and of course our local emergency food providers and others. So making sure that that information is out there, not only for folks who may lose access to SNAP, but also recognizing that many folks' SNAP benefits are not enough to get them through the month. So making sure that we're providing the full suite of resources is always important. So with that sort of background, those highlights of what our work group has been focused on, I do want to sort of open up the floor in recognition that so many organizations on this call are already doing this work. You have been shouting from the rooftops for the last several months to try to make sure that people are aware of ABOT and have the resources that they need. And I think this can be an opportunity to hear what's been working well. What are folks doing in their communities, and where are there gaps or undertapped opportunities that we could leverage a little bit better in the months and years ahead? So first, if folks could either chime in the chat or raise your hand and share, what are some of the ways that you all have already been communicating with families about ABOT, and is there anything that you found to be especially effective? I think I see a raised hand from Mitch. Do you want to hop on? Maybe not. Any other takers?
Mitch, it looks like you are unmuted if you want to speak. Okay, I think we can go to Joel, and then we'll come back to Mitch if you have a comment.
Great. I just posted in the chat our guidance on how to meet the work requirements. And again, stress that a lot of low-income New Yorkers, a lot of New Yorkers overall and Americans overall don't know always they have disabilities that count legally as disabilities. So we urge, thorough pre-screening of physical and mental disabilities. Two, you can meet the work requirements through, as we said, work or training. And we really continue to urge the state to more thoroughly use the SNAP employment and training dollars, which are still entitlement dollars from the federal government. We're told their OTA is working on a request for proposal, but the time is, it's pretty urgent that we need this done 5 yesterdays ago. That being said, I really want to praise the state for their interpretation and Commissioner Gwynn and her great staff, their interpretation of how you can meet these work requirements through volunteerism. And New York has adopted a more creative and expansive definition of that than any state I know. And in fact, I've been in conversations with other states how they can use New York State as a model. So just to reiterate, if you volunteer, it's your benefits divided by the minimum wage, and in wherever you are in the state, in New York City and Westchester and Long Island, it's $17 an hour. It's a little less in the rest of the state. So I'm not a math genius, but if your benefits are $170 a month and the minimum wage is 17 in New York and Westchester and Long Island, that means your volunteer requirements for the month are 10 hours, considerably less than the 80 hours for working or job training. So that equals about 2.5 hours a month, a lot more doable for many low income people. As I noted before, we did place in the chat our tool that any nonprofit in New York can post volunteer activities, and then you can monitor online. You can use it to print out proof that you can submit. At least in the city of New York, you have to submit a form to be able to host those volunteers, but it's a very simple form. And I believe they're just sort of accepting any nonprofit group. And by the way, if you're at the minimum SNAP benefit of $24 a month, it's basically about an hour of work a month. So, again, volunteer work. The irony is if you get paid for so much as an hour, then you have the $80 hours a month requirement. But if you don't get paid at all for your work, it's again your benefit divided by the minimum wage. And we're also lucky in the state that our minimum wage is marginally higher than some of the other states. So in a place where they're still stuck at $7.25 an hour, which is insane, then same federal program, you'd have a lot more volunteerism to do to meet those. Now we do are going to push I don't know that this is going to get done in the Farm Bill, but maybe a lame duck session of Congress, particularly if one or more houses move, change to get this undone by Congress. And I just note that among the most egregious things they did is they took away exemptions from veterans and then lied about the justification. And I don't use the word lied lightly, but the chair of the House Agriculture Committee, Mr. Thompson, said he did it because if you didn't exempt veterans, they could no longer get SNAP employment and training funds. That's demonstrably 1,000% incorrect. I've communicated with the staff. They've not given me the cursory response. I understand a number of members of the committee. Democrats have spoken to him. He's refused to acknowledge that. And so not only are they taking away from food from unemployed veterans, they're lying about it. So I just think it's have to be clear what we're up against right now.
Thanks, Joel. Mitch, do you want to see if we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Nice. Okay, just wanted to share two things. One is we as a food, so I'm with FoodLink in Rochester, New York. We took the domain savemysnap.org and redirected it to our website with some information about what to do if in fact you are at risk of losing your benefits. I think a lot of times asking people to go and navigate government websites doesn't always work all that well. So savemysnap.org is simple and to the point, and we've been doing some paid advertisements for it. You know, I'm talking actually to our county DHSs tomorrow to understand what kind of impact they've seen by that communication. But I think it's really helpful to try to, so even when governments try to use non-jargon, I think things still end up feeling jargony. So trying to socialize some of this language, I think, is really helpful. And the other thing, I've talked about this with this group before too, but in Monroe County, we piloted with, led by a group called Together Now, the creation of a screener. So the conversation we heard before about all the different exemptions that people may be eligible for, there's actually a tool that we're using, and it's on that savemysnap.org website that encourages people to go in and do a self-screening. I've encouraged New York State OTDA to potentially use this and purchase the ability to use this screening tool across the state. I think it'd be very helpful if they did. But I don't know where we are in that process. I just think it's been a really, really helpful tool in case people want to try to develop their own.
Thanks so much.
Mitch.
I just wanted to point out a couple comments that we received in terms of things that are working. Michelle in Rockland said that lunch and learn presentations for the food pantries they're working with has been very successful. So again, just to Mitch's point, breaking this down and getting together with people in smaller groups to understand in plain language and answer questions that are maybe specific to their operation. And then Kiara at Feeding Westchester shared in the chat that they're partnering with local nonprofit Westchester organizations, a food pantry partner, and the local Westchester County Department of Social Services to host a virtual briefing on HR1, go over the changes to SNAP, including the ABOD requirements, and they're targeting food pantry partners and neighbors just to help people navigate those changes, which is great. Sarah, I think, also shared some things in the chat, but you have your hand up, so why don't you verbalize that?
Yeah, thank you. I'm having some trouble finding the live link, so I'll get that in the chat here in a second. But a few of the things that we're working on that I feel great about is similar to Mitch, have partnered with some counties. The biggest success has been in Tompkins County, where a SNAP task force was formed. And a website called Tompkins Opportunity was created with like a partnership of the United Way, DSS folks, other CBOs in the county, including the Food Bank of the Southern Tier that serves Tompkins County. And that's been, I think, helpful for people to find volunteer opportunities to meet that work requirement. We also presented to all of the counties in our service area either live presentation or central recording, and had some interest from Chemung, not a whole heck of a lot from our other counties. So if there's anyone on this call who has any ideas about promoting collaboration between, nonprofit organizations that serve the county and the county itself, I'd love to work on that. But the Food Bank of the Southern Tier created a toolkit for our pantry partners to be, trusted messengers for SNAP participants to know about the upcoming work requirements, and also to prepare to be organizations that welcome volunteers in order to keep that work requirement. And I will put that in the chat as soon as I can find a live link, again, working from my phone. Another thing that we're doing is annually present to each county, and we run through all of the implications of the One Big Beautiful Bill, which I say instead of HR1 because I want everyone to remember where it came from. And that has been really beneficial. I just presented to Tioga County this morning, and a lot of the legislators didn't know about the, subpopulations of folks that were now being forced to adhere to these work requirements. And I just wanted to keep that conversation alive, and hopefully it will garner more understanding and support. And I also always share the OTDA caseload data from the most up-to-date month, and do the economic calculations for the impact within each county to ensure that they understand that it's a lot of money that we're getting from the federal government, but also there's a lot of money that we're leaving on the table in DC. And so I try to make that very clear in my presentations to county ledge. Thanks.
This is really helpful, and it's really wonderful to understand what is working in communities. If you all have any resources that you'd like to send our ways, we can centralize those and maybe create a resource that we can post as a follow-up to this meeting, just to help people connect with, other areas and methods for getting the information out.
Yeah, this is really helpful. I wish we had another 2 hours to just hear what's working well and gather sort of best practices that might be replicable. I know we're at time to transition to discussion, so we'll just note I added some of that data that Sarah mentioned in the chat, and want to underscore briefings for elected officials as something that has worked really well on our end as well. We did briefings for the Senate and Assembly, including their district office staff, so that when they're getting questions, they have all of the information they need. And also wanted to highlight that Bill and Teddy from OTDA joined us for a Q&A on ABOD with SNAP navigators, but also other community partners. And it was a opportunity for organizations that are working on the ground to elevate not only questions, but feedback and observations of what's causing challenges for folks, what needs more clarity, what additional resources would be helpful. So that seemed to be really valuable to folks, and we hope to do some other calls like that in the future as this continues. But Kate, I think I want to keep you on this agenda since everybody else has done such a nice job of doing that. So I'll turn it to you if you want to take the discussion from here.
Great. It was a nice primer. So we could stop sharing the slide deck and go into our discussion. Again, there's so many different points that have been made across the work groups, and really want to open up the floor to hear from all of you. For those that are tuning in online, you can use the Q&A feature and elevate any questions or comments that you have. We'll also provide our email addresses for myself, Kate, Kendall, and Ashmita at the end of the presentation. So please send us resources. We can consolidate questions. Aside from the 2 public meetings each year that the council has that are posted and recorded, we do have our work group meetings 4 times a year, and we're getting a lot of springboards here of things that need further discussion. So now's the time to elevate your questions, concerns, ideas across any of these work groups, from economic vitality, food assistance networks, food as medicine, or food access programs. Also, any of our state agencies, if you did not provide an update and you would like to, you can definitely provide that now. One of the things that I'll wait for people to raise their hands, but just to fill a little bit of space. One of the things that we did talk about a lot in our work groups, but haven't really elevated more specifically now, is the non-citizen eligibility for SNAP. And I think Liz is on the call. Liz, if you wanted to provide any kind of update as to what the Office for New Americans has been working on, or areas where you would seek further collaboration, I think this would be a good time for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide that. So there's a number of people who are going to be losing benefits, SNAP benefits. And I believe it was Hunger Solutions that the data showed it was like something like 40,000 people across New York State that we know of. So that will be interesting to be able to track that. And there's a few different things that we've been keeping an eye on, how we can support people who are interested in changing their status, although that could be a multi-year process, and then everything could change between now and when they change their status to become an eligible status. We're looking at resources that we can utilize to leverage non-SNAP food programs. I know in one of the meetings, Joel had mentioned some of those great resources. We're building out our Know Your Rights webpage, Know Your Rights, Know Your Resources webpage. I'll link that in the chat after, just to start brainstorming what is available to people. Some of the things that we're looking to keep an eye on are the impact, not just specifically in New Americans, but where that spending power occurred. So a good example would be in the Central New York regional market alone, our farmers market here in Syracuse, where I'm based out of. They've done 1.2 million in the last year with the SNAP change and Fresh Connects. And a majority of that is through New Americans, and that money is going to be lost to local farmers. So the impacts outside of just New Americans. Some of the things that we're looking at are where to triage them, best resources, and a couple of questions that I had actually for the group. I'm wondering if because I used to work with food pantries, are there resources for best practices for smaller pantries? Like maybe a checklist they can go through, how to best utilize and leverage their buying power in certain spaces. That might be something to help the private funding that is going into this, which we know is very limited. Our other interests in looking at data of how much SNAP is going to New Americans, what percentage and what amount, understanding about how many people are actually going to be impacted. We have projections. It'll be good to have that actual data to know. There's a lot going on. I hope that answers some of the questions. Probably, created more questions, but happy to take any feedback. We're still trying to navigate everything that's going on, of course.
Yeah, that receipt of information of what's needed and being able to respond to it is so important, as well as what you alluded to, the data tracking and really getting a little bit more granular with OTDA on what's projected to be the impact versus what is the impact over these months ahead will be really important. I saw that. Was there any comment related to that?
The comments. Food pantries and soup kitchen best practices. That's a great resource. I knew if I mentioned his name, a resource would pop up. That's usually what happens. So thank you again, Joel.
That's great. We'll capture that. I see Christine.
Yeah, hi everyone. I just want to give an update from New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I think I've mentioned this at previous meetings, but in New York State, we have the food donation and food scraps recycling law. And I just wanted to alert or remind everyone that that law will be expanding starting January 1st.
So this is a law that requires our state's largest businesses, institutions, and other entities to donate and then to also recycle their food scraps through composting or another technology. So right now, this law is applicable for businesses that generate 2 or more tons of wasted food per week. Starting January 1st, 2027, that's going to go down to entities that generate 1 ton or more of wasted food. And then that will once again expand January 1st of 2029 to a 1/2 ton or more per week. So we're anticipating, so right now there's about 1,000 businesses that have to comply with this law. We're anticipating January 1st that we'll be adding another 1,000 businesses. We are required to publish a list of entities that have to comply. So that list will be coming out in the next month or so. So entities know what their compliance requirements are starting January 1st. We have a really great relationship with Feeding New York State. I know Kathleen is on the call today. We've been funding a food recovery program through them since 2021. And happy to say since 2021, they've diverted 96 million pounds from entities that are required to comply with this law, which is a huge success. We're hoping to celebrate 100 million later this year. And then my final update is we're just waiting on the state budget to pass, but DEC will be announcing a new emergency food relief organization grant program, probably sometime in the summer, early fall. Thank you.
Christine, I have a quick follow-up question from Michelle in the chat. They're curious if there are provisions to have healthier food donations versus stores that donate ultra-processed foods or sugar-sweet beverages.
So under the law, there are no mentions of that. It's really up to, so we also don't dictate who these entities have to donate to. So they can work with food banks, food relief organizations. It's really up to them, and just kind of staying with guidance from those organizations on what they can and cannot accept.
Thank you.
Christine. And also we'll capture any links. Christine, if you have any links you want to send us, we can capture those and circulate to the group. Just looking here through the chat to see if there's anything else. I see Joel had a hand up again.
Yeah, I just think it's important to stress that unlike SNAP, which is an entitlement, and school meals, which are entitlement, that everyone entitled to the program gets funding from the federal government, there's fixed funding and fixed amounts of food for pantries and kitchens. So if instead of the pantries and kitchens, served by food banks and food rescue groups, served 1 million people, they serve 1.1 million people. They're generally not providing more food. They're just dividing up the food they already have 1.1 million ways instead of 1 million ways. So I know I'm a broken record, but I think people need to understand that there's no way that charitable food, even a major increase, can do anything but make up for a very tiny part of what we're about to see. And I think as appreciative I am about what HRA, what OTDA is doing, I know that there's not anything, at least my understanding, the state budget agreement to really address SNAP, the big ticket item. And if we look down the road of our evil, future, what we could suffer from is looking at the state of Arizona, where they've lost half the SNAP rolls in the last year. If we even lost 10% of the SNAP rolls in New York State, the catastrophe would be unimaginable. So we've been discussing this with our mayor's office. We'll continue pressing the state on this. We need a broader plan to both try to reverse some of those cuts and to deal seriously with them if they're not reversed by Congress. We're talking literally billions of dollars worth of food could go away, billions with a B.
Thanks, Joel. That relates to a question that came in from Maritza online. She was asking, is any agency looking at changing SNAP enrollment eligibility requirements like income by family size, et cetera? So Sherry, you could speak to this probably more directly, but it's my understanding obviously the program is implemented by OTDA in the counties, but that those requirements are put in place at the federal level. So that basic understanding and that advocacy really has to be directed to the federal level. Did you want to clarify on that?
Yeah, you're right. Those are federal requirements, and nothing in HR1 around any of the cost shift or other provisions permit any changes to eligibility rules or any reduced access. So, in other words, districts in New York, of course, SNAP is administered at the local district level. In other words, districts cannot reduce access or restrict eligibility in any way, any differently than what the current rules allow. And they have to do that. They have to continue to maintain those, within the reduction in SNAP administrative funding and with the added work involved in administering the ABOD requirement and the non-citizen changes as well. So it creates a much more tenuous situation, but I just want to be clear that clients are not expected to bear the burden of the cost shift, I think is sort of like what we're getting at. That's theoretical, right? This is uncharted territory.
Thanks for that. We have Andrew and then Susan, and then we probably have to close out our meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Hey there. Yeah, thank you. I guess a few things sort of came up in my mind. One is, yes, agree with Joel, like cash benefits, SNAP, access to, benefits programs like WIC and SNAP, outreach and enrollments like number one and should be probably a number one priority here. I think one thing I would just elevate is, there was mention, I think, in the food assistance networks about some of the innovations. And I think one was, cash benefits. I know New York Health Foundation invested in cash benefits for SNAP users in lieu of not receiving benefits that month. I know local organizations worked with grocery stores to provide cash benefits for SNAP users or coupons, like $50 coupons for groceries. So, and there are state level opportunities, speaking to SNAP, in terms of like the SNAP for all or the minimum benefit, that are ways to sort of enhance what I would personally say is like the best way to get people food, which is cash in their hand to go buy the food, culturally relevant, appropriate food that they want at the stores that they shop. So for me, I think just highlighting that. Another piece is just early on, so like just the data piece. We did speak with the BRFSS, the BRFS folks that run it for the state. I'm not sure where the legislation is going to go in trying to enforce them to include that in BRFS, but it sounds like it is a viable opportunity. It would, take a little bit of funding to do that, and they have to balance all the different health department needs across the state in terms of the survey can only be so large. So, we'll see how that plays out. But the surprise to me in that conversation was it sounds like for 2027, every 3 years, there's a deep dive county level, broader survey that gets, county level data, and that doesn't happen every year. And it sounds like that was prior, it was funded through Medicaid. And because of cuts, it's not going to happen in 2027 like it's supposed to. It sounds like it's about a 2.9 million shortfall to make that deep dive county level data happen. And regardless of whether the USDA food security questions are included, I think that's just an important sort of thing to flag. And I know my understanding is that, there was some, if the state has a budget, when the state has a budget, there was conversation about including something, but it sounds like on the advocacy side, there could be an opportunity to say, like, this is an important survey. It would be great to include the USDA data, even if it's like every other year, that 6-item survey. But the fact that it can't even happen at the county level because the money isn't there is like a real challenge. So just want to flag that. And then I guess one other kind of question I have, maybe this is, Sherry with O2DA or elsewhere, but I think has been some conversation, I assume, on the state level about data sharing and trying to like get those ABOT exemptions sort of verified to reduce the potential people losing SNAP. And I'm just curious, has there been progress on the data sharing with Department of Labor, Social Security, or whatever that is? And is that looking like a promising opportunity to really reduce the folks who are dropping off of SNAP because of the HR1 OBA changes?
I'm just looking real quick to see if Bill or Teddy left. I think they did leave the call, right?
I think so. So
Okay.
one thing I would say is since we're running a little short on time, we do have our work group meetings that we'll be sending out alert for. And I think we can tag this into our work group meeting for July for the food access programs, but also set something up sooner, probably as needed.
Yeah.
To address it. So we have the right people in the
That
room
would be
to
good.
speak to it.
Thank you. There's a lot of work underway. I'm just not in the middle of all of it, so I don't want to misspeak, but just I think the question is a good one, and know that, you know, to the extent that all of those data shares are permissible, they're all being explored and worked on. I just can't speak to the exact mechanics or the timing, but we can get that information pulled together for a follow-up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Good. Okay, great. And we probably just have 1 minute. So Susan, I think you had an update, and then we'll go to Kendall to round out the meeting with what's coming up next. I don't hear you, Susan, if you're talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So just very, very quickly, I want to answer Kelly Young asked a question about RMP. And yes, we are still building it out. Any restaurants that want to apply, just get in touch with, with OTGA's office, and we can get an application and get them through the process and get them onboarded. So yes, restaurants are open door. The RMP is doing great. We'll do an update on that at another time. What I wanted to do is was do thing on I don't know if all of you are familiar with customer experience. It's in a governor's state of the state a few years back, she created the customer experience team, which is inside chamber. And the purpose of this team is to really work with state agencies to understand what the roadblock is to get money out to people like Joel who wait forever to get their money and have to borrow money so they can pay for the services that New York State hasn't paid them for. So customer experience is really looking at, from an agency perspective, what's the backlog, and also from a consumer's perspective, from organizations, what's taking so long. But we were able with DOH to create a program that we're just about to get out, which is going to be very, very exciting. We don't know what it'll do, what it'll accomplish, but it's opening up the door for conversation. It has to do with HIPNAP and Nourish New York. It has to do with the RMP, sorry, not the RMP, the RFA process. DOH is about to start to get the RFA for the next 5 years reviewed. But what we want to do is reach out, and we're working with customer experience to be the ones who reach out to the pantries and the food banks and the people with the lived experience to get an understanding of the HIPNAP contracts, what works for agencies, what doesn't work for agencies, what the process is all about, what things that, they feel that working on. Basically, the next step is going to be customer experience is going to be reaching out to pantries and food banks and all of our partners outside of even somebody like Joel who doesn't get HIPNAP, but still is somebody that's really important to reach out to have these conversations so we can understand where the state and DOH could solve, address everybody's concerns a little bit better and improve the program to the best of our ability, get conversations going. But it's a really exciting thing because this is going to be the very first time that we're not just looking at contracts, but customer experience is going to take this on, and they're looking at the success of the contracts, not just the problems with the contracts, but how to tinker with the projects, not just how to get paid faster. So it's going to be the first project undertaken by customer experience. It's in chamber, so it gets all of the issues that happen with HIPNAP, with the legislative add-ons and how that doesn't, stream the certain way that the contract for HIPNAP streams. This is inside the governor's office, and so the governor's office will hear all the good, the bad, and the ugly, and hopefully this will be a really, really good project that we can work on and basically go from there. Just two other very, very quick things I just want to say.
Sorry, Susan, I have to interrupt you. Definitely send us any more updates that you have, but we do have to round out the last.
No, I just wanted to thank Joel for his kind words about OTGA and Commissioner Gwynn. That's all. On behalf of Commissioner Gwynn, I wanted to thank Joel for his kind words. And the only last thing I wanted to say, Kate, was just basically, this is an incredible team that's working really hard. Everybody's working really hard. But at the end of the day, we all have to, and we all realize hunger on our own. It's bigger than hunger, it's housing, it's minimum wage, it's all these other issues, and we're just a part of the problem. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really ties back to everything that we've been talking about today in terms of, collaboration, data sharing, mapping, really understanding the issue holistically. I know we'll follow up on a lot of these issues in our work group meetings. And again, folks can email lingering questions, comments, ideas, resources, etc., and we'll consolidate those together, springboard off into our work groups. We will hold our next meetings coming up, and I want to give Kendall an opportunity to just review that with the group, and then we'll close out with Commissioner at the end of our meeting.
Thanks, Kate. And I started typing this into the chat and I pressed send too soon. So I'm just going to verbalize our next steps because I want to give Commissioner enough time. So what we're looking at for the rest of this year is our next set of work group meetings that are going to happen in July, between the 2nd and 3rd weeks of July. And then in October, we will have our next full council meeting. And then our final work group meetings of the year will be in November. And as you all know, in December, we will be getting the annual report ready to be delivered and elevated to Chamber for release. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we're going in the next few months. So keep an eye out on your emails and I will send calendar links for the next set of work group meetings. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Commissioner for some closing remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Kendall, Kate, and everyone. I think you all continue to demonstrate your value to this discussion and more importantly to the cause and to the work. This has been a packed agenda. I think Ellie pointed out a dynamic agenda. It certainly was all of that. And really appreciate the presentations, really useful information, the insight into New Jersey's efforts, and mostly, I really appreciate the report outs and the work done in the work groups. I've got a couple of pages of notes from each group, I think. I think the alignment of the groups is really a resource in and of itself. Collaboration, clearly more important than ever. I think Kate pointed out right in the beginning here, the focus and collaboration on pathways for communications, on crisis mitigation, and the need for partnerships that was talked about in the annual report from 2025. And as we look ahead, we will stay close. We'll continue to rely on the resources and the strengths that all of you bring to the table. So thanks so much for your time today. Thanks so much for the information and the links that you all shared, and mostly for the energy. We'll be following up and staying close and visiting in the upcoming work groups. So thank you all for this. Much appreciated.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Stay well, everyone.
Thank you.